Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead. On porch time today. I know we're not on the porch, but you know the story. There's so much noise outside now with the dogs across the road talk. It's preventing me from doing porch time on the porch. So we're going to be doing it in different locations until we can, I don't know, get some kind of resolve done to this situation. But today, there is a subject that we keep getting asked a lot about. And I guess I might as well talk about it a little bit, and that is building a homestead. There's this misconception out there that you can just build a homestead overnight and it's everything you ever dreamed of. And well, guys, let me tell you something. There's nothing further from the truth. If you don't believe me, contact the Lorries next door. They can tell you. Brian has done an amazing job with his homestead in just 1 year. But that's because he busted his tail every day on that homestead. Now, that's an exception to the rule. In a normal situation, first thing is locating a homestead place. That is probably number one to anything else about homesteading is location, location, location. It's just like real estate. It's all about location. Be mindful of where you locate at. If you are within a couple of miles of an interstate or next to a big city or anything like that, you have to realize that in order to assure that you have what you're looking for, it depends on what your expectations of a homestead is. If you can handle a lot of people being around you and put up with a lot of noise and stuff like that, then you can pretty much live just about anywhere. But you have to understand, a lot of people in the country now are really not country people. They are people that have moved from the city out to the country, and the sad part about it is they're bringing a lot of the things that they try to run away from, they tend to bring with them. They get out into the country, and the first thing you know, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's doing this and I just can't stand it, or this guy's doing that and I can't stand it. I mean, we need some new rules. And the first thing you know is you have this rule's been applied, this rule's been applied, and then really the whole reason for living a rural life has gone away because, everybody makes a lot of noise now. Everybody's got to have a four-wheeler. Everybody's got to have a gator. Everybody's got to have a motorcycle. I mean, everybody's got to have at least 3 to 4 barking dogs. I mean, it doesn't matter. All the noise from the city has been brought to the country. So, if you don't want noise, you've got to understand that you're going to have to really go rural, and you're going to have to really buy a large tract of land in order to get stuff far enough away from you that you really don't have to put up with someone being right next door to you. Now here where I lived out here for many years by myself. I built a beautiful homestead across the road from me, but circumstances, I had to let go of that one and build another one on some property I owned right across the road over here on the other side. And there for many, many, many years, it was just me and 2 or 3 neighbors out here. But then all of a sudden, things happened that's beyond our control, like Hurricane Katrina came through, and then you have an influx of people moving up, getting away from the Gulf Coast areas. Any kind of natural disasters can push people into certain areas, like we're talking about the grand solar minimum coming in. There's going to be a massive migration of people in the future from the north to the south. And these are all kind of things that we think about. A lot of people up in the Ozarks and the Appalachians and stuff think that we've got the most greatest lifestyle in the world. But guys, if this grand solar minimum goes off the way that the scientists are saying it's going to, people are talking about flooding to those mountainous regions in there. Flooding from there even into the southern parts of Arkansas, northern Mississippi, Tennessee, on down into Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, places to upper part of Louisiana, so they can still grow stuff. I mean, this is what's been projected for the future. So building a homestead is really a big deal, mainly because you're using the word homestead. Now, if you're just trying to hobby farm out on a place and raise a few vegetables and maybe have one animal or something like that, it's not that big of a deal, because if you're HOA, a lot of those HOAs are everywhere. All the timber companies around me now have put in HOAs. Even in rural places, there's so many covenants. You can't have a pig, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have but 4 or 5 chickens, you can't have any roosters. And we're talking about 20 miles out in the country. They're putting in all these rules. So you have to really pay attention to covenants when you go to looking for a particular place to purchase. Look about timber deeds. I mean, I live in a part of the country that was the timber capital of our country for a long time down here. And every piece of property out there, if somebody has timber on it, they've held a timber deed on it. And when they sell the land, people go, oh, all this beautiful timber, we're going to get all this land with this beautiful timber. And the next thing you know, somebody's out there marking trees, and they go, well, what are you doing on my land? And they go, well, no, we own the timber off of it because we held a deed to the timber. You bought the land, but you didn't get the timber. And I've been one of those that used to be in the logging business who had to go in and cut people's places like that. They had no clue, and I mean, it was really sketchy there for a while. So building a homestead is really a big deal. First of all, you've got to determine what are your expectations. What are you actually looking for? What are your goals? What are your dreams? What are you trying to accomplish on a homestead? There's so many variables in trying to be self-sustaining that there is no one equation to any of it. It's basically what are you willing to endure? If you're trying to find a place for an LCE, some sort of a life-changing event takes place that's really massive, like the grid goes down or the economy crashes and stuff like that, and you don't want anybody near you, then I suggest you buy a very large piece of property and you get way away from any city and to as far into a country area as you can get, because it's just not as easy as we think it is. Now, first and foremost, location is number one when looking for a homestead. Now, secondly, is you're going to want to make sure when you look for a homestead that there's at least 1 to 2 alternate water sources besides a municipal water source, because if the grid goes down, the municipal water source is totally useless to you. You're going to need a well that you can get water out of manually. You're going to need a place that has intermediate streams or regular streams, a creek, a pond, something like this on it. You're going to need something that has those things on it so that when you build, you can design a homestead around the water source. That's number one. When you build a homestead, it must be designed around the water source, because without water, you're not going to live. I mean, let's just be honest. And then again, it's depending on, from that point on, it's depending on what are your goals. Are you planning on raising a lot of animals? Are you wanting to have all of your own meat? Or are you planning on bartering for some meat? Are you planning on raising all your vegetables? You plan on bartering for some vegetables? What exactly are your goals? Because how much effort are you willing to put into it? Because that's the biggest thing we've found in dealing with individual people who come to us and talk to us, is just simply about how much effort you're willing to put into it. A lot of people's like, well, I have to work still. I have to do this still. And I only have a few hours on the weekends, or only have a few hours in the evenings when I come in. Well, if that's the case, then you just need a few chickens and a few rabbits, because that's about all you're going to be able to handle. And they're going to have some really good structures to keep predators away from them, because if not, then they're going to end up, you know, getting eaten or whatever. And depending on the size property that you choose will depend on whether or not you have the luxury of free ranging. Because if you live around a bunch of people that's just got dogs that run loose in the neighborhood, and you're not willing to go ahead and spend the money and put a good fence system up, then you're going to lose your flocks. Because for some strange reason, people in the world seem to think that dogs rule, and that they should have the right to go anywhere they want to go. And the stupidest thing, I mean, my dog stays in my property line right here. He has a collar. If he gets out of line, I mean, it brings him back. And, you know, there's nothing that says anybody else can't do the same exact thing. Animals are to be controlled. And it's the same thing if you're free ranging anything. It needs to be controlled within a confined area. My turkeys, lots of times I'll let them just free range. I'll leave them alone. I just let them go. As long as they stay out of my garden, we don't have a problem. You know, they get out, they eat bugs, they insects, they scratch, they do whatever, they peck clover, whatever. My goats all ramble in fields, but they all have fences around them. My cows roam in the fields all the time. They all have fences around them. Everything has paddocks. Everything is moved, you know. It depends on what you're looking for with an animals. And if you decide to go with anything like goats or cows or pigs or anything like that, then you got to realize you're going to financially have to come up with some money for infrastructure. These animals cannot just stay out in the cold. They have to, in the rain, they've got to have a roof over their head, and they need a decent roof over their head. If you're going to be a good steward of your animals, then you need to have a facility for them that's nice. You don't need to just go throw up some little shanty thing out there out of pallets and they expect those animals to live in it. I mean, they need to have something decent if you're going to do a good job. This is one of the biggest issues that the states and the government and all have with homesteaders, is that they throw up all this makeshift stuff and it looks kind of tacky in a lot of ways. And the states and all come in and they try, well, we got to regulate this because look at this is unhealthy. If homesteaders could get it in their mind to, when they put up something, to put up something that looks really nice, it doesn't have to be expensive, but at least it can be decent and show that their animals are well taken care of, then our states and all, according to some of the people I talked to, would not have near as much problem with people keeping their own milk or selling their own milk. I know used to, when I sold milk, my goat milk, and sold my butters and my cheeses and stuff like that, when they come in to look at what I had, I mean, I had a specific room with concrete floors with drains in them. I had sinks that you didn't have to, stainless steel, you don't have to touch them with your hands to turn faucets on. They have it's like the surgical ones that I use in operating rooms. You take your knee and push handles and you turn the water on. I have everything was very clean, could be washed down. They don't have a problem when they see something like this. It's when they go into a place and everything's got dirt floors in it and there's hair everywhere, there's poop everywhere and stuff like this, and it's a very unsanitary condition. The goat milking stand isn't clean, it hasn't been washed, it hasn't been bleached or anything like that on a daily basis. The floors aren't, I mean, it's just, everything just looks nasty. That's when the states and the governments have problems with homesteaders. So if you plan on marketing any of your products from your homestead, even if it's vegetables or whatever it is, you need the proper facilities to be able to do this without having someone breathing down your neck. You need proper scales. You need, if you're going to be drying onions or drying stuff, you need drying racks. There's all these things that you need. If you're going to be selling, you need some way of cooling your vegetables down, some sort of a cooler type system. I mean, and I know this kind of stuff, people goes, well, I don't have this kind of money to invest in it. Well, that's the point I'm making. It determines what your goals are. if you're trying to actually do something like say farmers markets, for instance. I mean, we have dear friends that do farmers markets. We don't have them here because people would just rather go to Walmart and spend more money, but rather than buy the fresh stuff. It's the society we live in. But we have lots of friends who go to farmers markets. And used to, I did farmers markets when they were really close by and were in my town. I was a contractor for a lot of these companies, and there are rules when I was marketing for companies. You know, you never picked a vegetable once the sun hit it. It always had to be picked once the sun was off of it, or it would wilt awful quickly. That was the purpose behind it. Some things like carrots or broccoli, onions, anything like that, greens, anything like that that you picked had to be cooled almost within the first 30 minutes. They had to be on ice or in some sort of a cooling facility. If you was going to pick them the evening before, they had to be misted down with a misting system on them and all that before I could actually send them to market. And if I got up usually around 5:30 in the morning, and I would pick my stuff like my tomatoes, my bell peppers, my cucumbers and stuff like that, and before the sun ever hit the plants, I was already on my way to the farmer's market. If I didn't pick them at dark the evening before and cool them down, at least the next morning I was up and got them picked and was gone before the sun ever hit the ground. And by the time the farmer's market started for me, I was already there, had my stuff set up, and my stuff was usually gone in a matter of minutes. I mean, it didn't take long at all. But this is just some of the things. If you're going to be homesteading, there's so many variables to wherever you live at. Now, here where we live at, guys, I live in an area that used to be extremely rural. Lots of farms up the road from me. Was Campbell's Soup used to have a huge tomato fields up the road from me years ago. The big tomato shed was on the other side of town out here. We were the cucumber capital of the world for a while for pickles and stuff. All that's gone now, and we've become a retirement county. It's where everybody wants to move to retire. We're not on the Gulf Coast. We're way inland, but we're not too far inland so that people can still ramble back and forth to casinos and go do the party thing at night and all this kind of stuff. So our area has become no longer a farming type country setting. It's become more now of a retirement place, and people are moving in to retire, and with it they bring the city lifestyle that's going rural on us. And with the rural lifestyle being what it is, with people from the city moving out to the country, it's become, it's not what everybody has it cracked up to be. There's so many variables now. The peace and the serenity and all that kind of stuff really is gone because people are looking for rules now. They want a lot of rules so that they don't have to have the hustle and bustle of the city, they think, but yet while they're in the country they feel like that there should still be some rules, you know. And when you take away all the rules, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that goes along with not having any rules also. I mean, it's like where we live at, we have to put up with the dogs across the road barking because there's no rules on that. I mean, they can just let them bark and there's nothing that can be done about it. So you have to learn that you have to be able to accept some things and let some things go. So it gets difficult. So it depends on what you as an individual are looking for in a homestead. Now, when it comes to building infrastructure, that's one of the reasons we've been doing the barn edition and videoing every process of it, is because we want to show people that building something takes time to do it right. And it doesn't just happen overnight. Now here at Deep South Homestead, when I build something, I don't just throw something up. I'm not going to run out there and just stick a couple of poles in the ground that I chopped down in the woods and nail some boards to it and, you know, and call that a barn addition, because in the long run, because of my climate where I live at, in a few years that'll just all rot and it'll be unsafe. Even though there's really no codes on barns, we don't want it to be an unsafe environment in the future. I'm the kind of person, when I do something, I like to use concrete, steel, treated wood. I don't like having to go back and redo something. Once I build it, I want it to last the rest of my life, if it all possible. I'm trying to incorporate that into our homestead here, and when you do that, it's not cheap to do that. It gets to be rather expensive to do projects, and I know that money is one of the biggest issues on homesteads. That's why on here at Deep South Homestead, you don't see us jumping out doing massive projects all the time. Wanda and I are very frugal. We save our money, and then when we get to a certain point and we can see light at the end of the tunnel, and we have enough money to get it blacked in, so to speak, then we move forward with it. But until then, no, we just hold off, and we don't go out and we don't start something that we can't, usually that we can't finish. Now, granted, there's lots of unforeseen things that you run into. One being like our tractor. You know, I mean, we bought a brand new tractor a couple of years ago. We're on tractor number 4, and that's you know, the company has really worked with us trying to make sure that we get a tractor that functions. But if I have any more problems out of the one I have now, I will probably cease to be a part of this company. And that's one reason on a homestead, there's things that you just need to pay attention to. I really wish now that I would have bought a tractor that was maybe a few years older, that did not have a computer system in it, rather than going buying a brand new one. But it's all the unforeseen things when you get in. You think if you buy something new that you're not going to have problems with it because it's new. It shouldn't be breaking down on you. So that's one of the things that we've had a problem with here on our homestead. Has just been basically over the past 2 years, it's just been tractor issues. And if you plan on having a homestead of any size to it, say 10 acres or more, then you need a tractor, because you're never going to get the things accomplished that you need to get accomplished if you don't have a tractor, at least with a front end loader on it. Because I can tell you from experience, your back is one of the most valuable things that you have right now. And if you mess around and hurt your back, then your back's hurt for the rest of your life. It don't go away. And that's why today we went ahead and made the purchase of a tractor with a front end loader on it, because the loader does most of our work for us, so that we don't have all the bending over and picking up and moving. If we don't have to tote something somewhere, the tractor can do the work for us. Work smarter, not harder on a homestead. So building a homestead, really, you've got to have the overall picture of the whole homestead. You can't just go into it blind. You need a plan. And Wanda and I have had a plan for quite some time to be self-sustainable with our vegetables. We've reached that. We do not buy vegetables in a store. The second thing was to be self-sustainable with meat. Now, last year we went on a journey to purchasing some cows, goats, pigs, all this kind of stuff, so that we could get to the point where we could be self-sustaining with meat. Now, right now, we're pretty much there. And if you're going to be self-sustaining with meat, you're going to have to get to the point where you can do your own butchering. Because I'm very proud of a lot of homesteaders I see out there today that there's a lot of them are friends of ours that have actually done their own butchering. We've had butchering done here at our homestead. I've taught it to several different people who've come here and learned how to process rabbits, learned how to process chickens and stuff like that, turkeys, pigs, and that has really been a blessing to us to be able to help other homesteaders get this under their belt, so that when they get ready to process theirs on their own, they kind of have a little bit of a knowledge about what it's like to do it. And let me say, this again goes back to the state the government and homesteading. So many homesteads out there just try to do all their butchering in a very unclean environment. You really need to set you aside a little room, 12 by 12, and go ahead and build it up and put you some FRP board on the inside, or I just use metal in mine. I just put the galvanized metal on the walls in mine. Something you can hose down. You do concrete floor with a drain in the middle of it. Some tables and some sinks and stuff like that you can bleach down. When people see this kind of stuff, they understand that you're trying to be clean with it. And these are the things that keeps the government and the state off of our backs a lot of times. Where they get their feathers ruffled up, or as it was pointed out to me by an official, where we get our heartburn from, is the words he used, was when people get out on the dirt and the grass out there and they're actually trying to butcher something and flies are all over everything, and there's not really any clean facility. The wind's blowing on them, the leaves are falling, and something falls in the dirt and all this kind of stuff, and there's really nothing clean there. That's when they get, the word he used was a heartburn. You know, in other words, it's a problem. So when you're going to design a homestead and you're going to design one and you plan on processing a lot of your own meat and stuff like that, take the time to just do a little 12 by 12 place, you know, and fix you a place where you can put your meat grinders and your meat saws, get you some stainless stuff. You know, people talk about how expensive it is. Guys, let me tell you something. I built mine for little or nothing. You know, one that I just invested the other day in a little old table that was designed to skin fish on. Basically, you hook a water hose to a faucet and put a 5-gallon bucket under the drink. You can get them on Amazon. I think we paid like $60 to $80 for this little table. It can be bleached and stuff like that. Nothing fancy, very clean. There's just the sinks in my place were refurbished from old facilities. They're all porcelain or stainless. So you can pick this stuff up on Craigslist. If you look around, just be frugal. When restaurants are going out of businesses and stuff like that, you can get these stainless steel tables and all for little or nothing. At auctions and stuff like that. Guys, that's just what you need. You know, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, and if you plan on being sustainable, then these are the kind of things you need to consider on a homestead. They can't all happen at once. It takes time to do this. It's just that in the society we're living in, guys, the bottom line is this: time's running out. And it's not going to be very long into the future before we start being governed really, really hard. And it makes me sad for the future generations. I'm not going to lie about that, because there's lots of young people out there in the millennials that want a homestead that I'm afraid that by the time they get there, that land's going to be so expensive that they can't really afford to do much. And then the rules are going to be so stiff that they can't afford to comply. And it's going to be up to people like us who have had our feet in it for a long time and have been able over the years to build stuff up to actually step in and help people like this get things set up and not really have to spend a ton of money. Now, I'm kind of fortunate where I'm at. My neighbors, if they want to do something, they know they're more than welcome to come over to my skinning facility where I butcher and everything. They know they're more than welcome to use it as long as they clean it up. When they get through, they bleach everything down, wash it all up and clean it. They're more than welcome to use it. And that's where, when you go to homesteading, you've got to take into consideration you can't do everything by yourself. Community is really a big issue. That's why I'm so headstrong here where I live at about building a particular community, because I know with what's coming down the pipe with the grand solar minimum, the possible grid issues and all this kind of stuff, the only way people will survive and be able to do it comfortably will be to be a community, because you can't stay awake every day of your life and watch everything you have. It's going to take people banding together. And if you go off out in the middle of nowhere and try to live by yourself, you're really like a ship in the ocean. You're kind of like a sitting duck in a pond. You're really not that hard to take out because you're by yourself, and you do have to sleep at some point, you know. So, you know, take all these things into consideration. Do I need a huge home as a homesteader? No. That's one of the biggest mistakes so many people make, and you're looking at one sitting right here. You know, I built a 2,300 square foot Victorian home years ago, and thinking that this was because back in the older days, they had the Victorian homes and the Victorian gardens and everything was, you know, I was in this fantasy world of creating the beautiful homestead and all this kind of stuff. And I built this big Victorian house here. Now it's extremely hard to keep it warm. We don't have a central heating unit in our house. We do have one, but it's messed up, and I've tried to have it fixed several times, and it fails every time, so I refuse to put any more money into it. Because if I do get it fixed, it takes like 4.5 tons just to heat this house. Then I've got a $300-something a month electric bill, which I'm not going to put up with. So we've decided we had a fireplace, but we took the fireplace out of the house and actually put in a wood heater system that's a catalytic type wood heater, so that we can heat the house efficiently. Now it doesn't heat the whole house. That's the problem. Because of the design of the home, it was designed to run off of central heat. The house doesn't get heated in all parts of the house, so therefore we have to have some other type of heating in other parts of the house, and it makes it rather difficult to, especially when it gets really, really cold. So that's why I tell people, don't go with a huge home. Build what you think you can use and have room to store some food in, and design it in a way that when you install wood heat, because you're going to want wood heat. I mean, I don't care what anybody tells you. In the future, wood heat is going to be the way. Propane, you can buy 1,000, 2,000 gallons of propane to last forever. You know, well, it doesn't go bad, but at some point, if you use it long enough, it will run out, and if the grid goes down, you're not getting any more propane. So you better set yourself up with some kind of a wood heat system in a home. Even if you don't use it very often, at least have it, and set it up in a way in which, as it heats, the heat will flow throughout the whole house. Or maybe attach a greenhouse to the side of your home, so that the heat from the greenhouse, put some bricks on that wall where the thermal mass will heat the house. It's just that if you're in the southern climates, you have to understand that same thermal mass is going to heat that house in the summertime as well as it does in the wintertime. Probably even more in the summertime than it does in the wintertime. So keep that in mind when you do it. Now, you got to look at land. If you plan on having animals, then you're going to need more pasture than you do if you plan on just having a garden. There's lots and lots of things that you have to take into consideration. Flatland, where I live at here, everything's on a hill for me. I mean, literally everything's on a hill. I got one little small flat place in the bottom of a swamp down here that I've turned into pasture for the cows. Everything else is on a hillside for me. You have to terrace farm it. You've got to have terraces set up. You've got to do the right types of row cropping in order to do it. It's very, very difficult to grow where I'm at. But I have really good soil here. That's the one drawback to it, is I have good sandy loam soil. I can grow a lot of stuff. So when you go to look for a homestead, make sure you're looking for the kind of land that you're wanting to be able to homestead on, whatever your desires are, whether it's row cropping, gardening is your biggest issue. Maybe you're a vegan and you don't eat meat, so you don't have to worry about animals. Or maybe you're a big meat eater and you don't eat a lot of vegetables, and maybe you need to have more animals. So you got to really take into consideration, how much land does it take per animal? You know, here in the South, we like to say an acre for a cow, a small cow, not a large one, an acre per small cow, if it's good grass. A horse, 2 acres for a horse. Goats, We don't like to put them on grass at all in the South because of the worm issue down here and the parasite issue. Goats need to just eat and browse in the woods because they're designed to only eat from the shoulders up. If they start eating on the ground, what you're going to end up with is eventually you're going to end up with a parasite problem. The only way you can prevent that is to never let the goats in the field when the grass is wet, because the barber pole worm will climb up the grass about 6 to 8 inches high if that grass is wet, but if it's dry it goes back to the ground. And it helps keep down some of the parasite issues if you just keep them in the barn till the fields dry up. So I'm trying to think here, guys. There's so much more I'd like to say about designing and building a homestead, and this is just this is one part of it. The other part is the designing of a home, the designing of a barn, and all this kind of stuff. We'll talk about that in another video. This video has gone long enough, and plus I got to get out and feed my animals. They're sitting out there screaming and hollering right now because I haven't been out to feed them. But I wanted to spend this time with y'all this morning, kind of giving you some ideas about homesteading and maybe getting rid of some of the myths behind homesteading, thinking that it's easy. It's really not. Homesteading literally requires more hours than going to a 9-to-5 job. Homesteading is from can till can't. Now I know that may sound kind of silly, but it's kind of like my daddy used to tell me when I was a kid. He said, we get up and go to work when it's daylight enough to see how. We quit. We eat when we get hungry. We quit when it gets dark, because any fool can tell when dark comes. So my dad believed in working from daylight to dark. We eat when we get hungry. That was his rules. That's the way I was raised, and that's still the way I live my life today. And it's there's no other life for me here on my homestead. That's what I love doing. I'm up before the sun gets up every morning. I've usually fixed breakfast, and I'm out the door usually before now, but I decided to sit in and do porch time this morning and spend some time with you guys. So thank y'all for spending some time with me and spending some time with Deep South Homestead. We really appreciate each and every one of you and look forward to your comments down below about your homestead, what you're looking for, what your goals are. Let me know in the thing down below so that it encourages me to see other people and hear their dreams, what they've experienced and things that they've faced and stuff like that. That's what this is all about. It's about interaction so that other people can look at your comments and say, wow, I didn't know that was going on in that area. Maybe they were planning on moving in that area and they were like, wow, I didn't know it was like that there, or whatever. But guys, that's what it's all about. It's about building community and sharing information with one another. So thank you guys with Deep South Homestead.